Today on the show, we're talking all about growth with Shay Prosser, Chief Growth and Strategy Officer at North12 Partners. With over 20 years of experience, she's dedicated to transforming complex challenges into actionable solutions. And her goal is clear: to help leaders turn big ideas into tangible outcomes. Now, a common theme I hear from our listeners, a lot of solopreneurs and small business owners, is that they can grow only until a certain point. And then there's this plateau that happens, and figuring out how to break through to the next can be really challenging. So, today we're talking about the common mindset blocks that might hold you back, how to make your first or next hire strategically, how to create operational strategies to unlock growth without burnout, and so much more. More than a strategist, Shay is a dedicated partner, guiding businesses to their true north. And I can't wait to share this next episode with you. And it all starts now. I'm Kara, and welcome to Soul Inspiring Business. I believe that all of us possess unique gifts and talents that allow us to serve the world and our own growth in the highest possible way. Our lives are an expression of our thoughts, beliefs, and actions. And here, we will explore businesses, thought leaders, and topics designed to inspire, helping propel your own growth so you can live your best and most purposeful life. Welcome to Soul Inspiring Business. Welcome back to the Soul Inspiring Business podcast. And today I'm thrilled to introduce you to our guest, Shay Prosser. She is the Chief Growth and Strategy Officer for North12 Partners. And she's really here today to help you, our listeners and our audience, really help you think about growth. And we're going to talk about, because a lot of our listeners, a lot of you listening right now, may be in that phase of, you want to grow, you want to stretch your business, you're a solopreneur, but you're thinking, what next? How do I grow? How do I, what's the strategy? So I am really excited to introduce you to our guest today. So welcome to the show, Shay.
Thanks, Kara. Glad to be here.
Yes, well, and for our listeners, we actually met through a mutual friend and Devo, who was also on the show. And we talked afterwards, and it was just sort of a soul connection. So I thought, gosh, I've got to have her on the show, got to bring, all of this wealth of knowledge that she has to share with you all. So I'd love to just kind of give, if you could just help people understand a little bit more about your background and how you were really called to this work.
Yeah, well, absolutely. So I've been a marketer and business developer for the last couple decades and really working with small and mid-sized businesses. So I left a chief marketing and sales officer position a few months ago to really go and help small businesses as they're growing. So sometimes it's solopreneurs, sometimes it's established teams. But really, when you get to that point where you feel stuck, you feel like you can't go further where you are now, you know a good bit about what you're good at and what you're doing, but saying, all right, there's more. I could do more. I could be more. I could serve more people. So really, as it relates to kind of why I do this work is I've grown up in small business. I've owned my own. My husband owns his own. I really do feel like small business is, it's cliche, but the backbone of America. It's what makes vibrant communities. And so I feel very much called to help business owners avoid some pitfalls, do things better, spend less time on mistakes, even though we all have to have some mistakes, right? You have to have a couple failures every now and then to make sure you are looking at what you really want to do. Sometimes failures teach you a lot. So I really feel like helping small business owners grow and either employ people or just provide incredible service to the people that they work with is something that I can help to kind of bring goodness to the world.
Yeah. Well, and I love what you were just saying, because it's something we talk about on the show a lot. And that is that I think a lot of us, the reason that we do what we do and we, are called to this entrepreneurship role too, is to make a difference in the world in some way. Right. And as we think about growth and we think about kind of getting bigger, it's like that progression in how can I impact more people? How can I help more people? How can I serve in a bigger way? Um, but yet there's a lot of fear that comes with that too. And there's a lot of things, limiting beliefs and all kinds of things that can hold us back from that. So what would you say from working with a lot of, entrepreneurs in this space? What do you think is kind of the biggest thing that sometimes holds people back or limits them when they're really good at what they do, but it's like they hit that plateau and they just can't get past
Yeah.
that, business, that income plateau?
Yeah, I think people really feel like they have to tackle things in a huge way. And I very much feel like most things are just start. Just do something. Like your website's never going to be good enough. It will never, ever. I mean, because if you're an entrepreneur, we come from that space of wanting more and always having a vision for what's next. So just do it and get something started and look at things and say, what is the simplest way I can do this? That feels professional, that feels good. It's kind of like picking the perfect outfit. Like it's never going to be perfect. But if you can look at your closet and be like, okay, well, what's something that feels good enough? And then I can build on it. And I feel okay. And I can build on that feeling. So I think people start by going, oh my gosh, websites are an easy one because I see people will spend lots of money and lots of time, especially when they're at that stage when they really need to unlock growth. You will never get a deal from someone just randomly coming to your website when you have no other marketing. You're not getting out there yourself. No one is randomly looking for you if you're not doing other things. So, really spending the time getting in front of people that can help you get in front of your client is the thing that I think people need to work on. And they kind of hide behind, I mean, we all do. It's like it's so much easier to do a website or to build another flyer or to send an email out to a mass list than it is to maybe get in front of that one person or one group that we know really could be a buyer today or could
Yeah.
be in front of that buyer.
I'm like laughing to myself because I've been through 3 rebrands. And you've probably seen that too. It's like, oh, well, I need to work on the logo again. It's like the logo, it doesn't matter at
Yeah.
the end of the day. I mean, it does, of course, right? You need to look professional. But it's that idea of, the perfectionism. Like, it has to be perfect. It has to be, in order for us to launch. And you're right. Sometimes it's just being, I think sometimes there's a reason too, like the C, some study was done where it's like the C students can be like the best entrepreneurs because they
Yes.
don't need to get stuck in the details, you
Yeah.
know?
Oh, it's totally, that's true. Like, I mean, what's the whole Bill Gates fell out of Harvard? If you look at entrepreneurs, some of the best ones, actually, there's a higher level of entrepreneurs that have dyslexia than in the general population. The theories I've heard is it's something around the fact that it's harder and that you aren't that A student. You had to work harder for everything, and then you have to figure out a different way around it.
Mm,
And you're right, it's the people who go do it that just you go and you try something and then you see how it resonates and then you learn to adjust and do things quickly so that you can adjust quickly and then learn you know
yeah. Yeah. It's like that good or great is the enemy of good, right? So it's like just get something out there. Like you can always refine, you can always tune, as you get going. So that's really good advice. Um, and what would you say? So I know you've been working with again a lot of smaller teams and solopreneurs. If somebody's kind of looking at, well, how do I get to that next level? What's the first, is it the hire that they need to look at? Like, what's the internal reflection that you would have somebody, or the process that you would maybe take somebody through so that they can figure out, okay, what is the aligned strategy for growth? It's a
so
it's a loaded question, but
Yeah,
it's a
no,
big
it's a
one.
great one though. So often what people fail to do is they fail to just look at what's already really worked, right? There's team structures that have really worked in whatever industry you're in. You can still be incredibly unique, but you can look at the foundational stuff in your industry and say, huh, what makes up that really good team? So if you are, I was talking to a small business owner that's a financial advisor. He's not in a big firm, but has built a successful individual practice over the last decade and a half. Well, wants to now look at what's going to happen next. So has brought in somebody. Well, there's a lot of people who've been very successful at that. So look at what exists in your market. And he's got a very specific niche. Well, but the structure, we spent 3 hours yesterday talking about the structure, which he wanted to bring in somebody just like himself. That's an often thing that we do is we go, I want to clone myself because I've been successful. What he's really bad at and has learned to compensate for is some of the operational stuff. So, I kind of helped him go, okay, what if somebody operationally could make it so that you could take on 50% more clients while still maintaining that heartfelt connection? What in that kind of business, what people don't want is to walk into their financial advisor's office, especially if they've been with somebody for a long time, and he forgets whether they have kids or grandkids or not. Because at some point, you can't hold all of that in your head. So we talked about, all right, let's bring in some operational things. So I think often people want to clone themselves, and we all have big areas that we're just doing our best to suffice at. So bring in your opposite, but not so opposite that you really hate that person.
Right. Yeah, that wouldn't be fun to bring in somebody that you don't get along with. But and how do you kind of do you have them write out their gifts? Do you have them write out what they're good at, or is there some type of personality profiling that you have them do? Like, what would be kind of your thought in terms of how to do that
So the
practically?
gifts part is, I mean, we know ourselves. And so doing and also I like just a really simple quadrant of, you go upper right corner is things that you like and are good at.
Hmm.
All right. Then the left quadrant is things that you like, but you're not that good at. Right. The
Hmm.
bottom left corner is what you don't like and aren't good at. That's super easy. You don't, yeah. Oh, don't like, not good at. But
Right.
then, so you really get this view of what you really enjoy and are good and bad at. So if you have each person do that, or if if you're a solopreneur and you're looking for somebody else, look at yours and then say, okay, what would someone who complements me look like? Um, and then you asked about personality assessments. So there's a lot of different assessments. I don't even, I've been certified in some of them. Um, Many of them will work. What you're going to want is an assessment that feels like you could look at somebody else and say, oh, I value the things that are different about you. Because really, at the end of the day, it's if you're a big picture thinker, finding a way that you can truly value someone who can take it to the nth level of detail will help you bring in someone that you go, you know what, they are going to dot all the I's and cross all the T's. And they might annoy me sometimes because I'm running down the path. I'm keeping going. But when you look at that profile that you either want or in someone that you're already working with and can appreciate like, hey, they're not slowing me down. They're actually dotting those I's and crossing those T's so that then I don't get slowed down by a train wreck happening because we didn't do these things. So I think a combination of looking at your own skill set, either if you don't have a coach or a tool, ask your friends and family. Now, ask them kindly to tell you
Right.
kindly what you're really good at and what you're not really good at. And they know, they'll
Yeah.
tell you very clearly.
Right. And I think for the most part, most of us have at least some level of self awareness in this. If you've gotten to the point of like entrepreneurship and business ownership, that you can kind of say, okay, I'm really good at this, or maybe not as good at this.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
having a level of self awareness. Um, and then how I think one of the challenges too is even once you know the right hire, it's like if you're operating at a high level, how do you bring somebody on and not and actually train them and get them the right tools? Because sometimes I think when you're used to being on the go and you're used to doing it all yourself, speaking from experience,
Yeah.
it can be sometimes challenging to make and carve out time to train that person or to develop a proper onboarding to set that person up for success. So sometimes them, even if it could be the right person, we're not getting them into a place where they're set up for success. So do you have any kind of tips or um, insights into how you've seen that work in a successful way?
Yeah, I think you're so right. Cause then we're like, okay, we can keep going and we've done all of this. And then what we do is we bring somebody in, and often people will try to bring somebody in part time, which is not bad, but you have to know what you need that person to do for you. And they will start dumping things. They'll start dumping the things that they're like, oh my gosh, you're really good at this. And I don't like to do this. I'm going to throw this over, but I'm not going to throw it over fully. I'm still going to maintain control over it so that you can't really take ownership of it. So I suggest that people take an inventory really early before they're even bringing somebody on, and take an inventory. One of the ways to do that is to record things over the course of a week. Like, look back on your day at the end of the day and say, what did I do today? What were my main things? What did I, again, that quadrant of likes and dislikes, good and bad at,
Hmm.
start filling that in, but take a inventory of the things that you were spending your time on that week or that day that you're best at and drive the business forward. Those things that you're doing that are driving the business and you're good at. Then look at the other things and say, okay, these are the things that are driving the business forward, but I'm not good at. Somebody else could do those better. And then the other things that, like, there will be always a group of things that just have to be done, right? They just have to be done. So getting those and getting clear on the tasks within your business, and then looking at, okay, what would it look like to have somebody take that over? So for instance, if you are a solopreneur and you're doing all of your own marketing, even if you've got a firm helping you, you're
Hmm.
still, are you writing blogs? Are you writing all the questions for your podcast? Are you putting together the graphics, or are you corresponding directly with the marketing team? That might be something you can bucket and say, hey, I want a monthly newsletter to go out to my people, and I can empower someone if I say, this is what it's supposed to look like, and this is how it's supposed to go. So it's really bucketing your things so that someone else could realistically take them over and not have to ask you every detail.
Yeah, I think that's super helpful because I think that sometimes that, you're exactly right. You bring somebody on and then everything gets dumped. And you're like, oh, all right,
Yeah.
that's good. On to the next. And then the other person's like, where do I go? And then feels almost like disempowered because then they feel like they have to, come to you more, or they don't have the right direction. And so they're sort of set up to fail from the start, you know?
Well,
So,
and often entrepreneurs, we're not the most efficient because we go and we do the things we love to do. So often best first hire is someone who's more efficient. So in the case of the financial advisor I was working with yesterday, he's brought somebody in, a fantastic younger person that is more operationally minded, but he's still just piecemealing stuff. So we had this great conversation with the operations person, and I said, what are you doing? Is 80% of it reactionary and 20% of it proactive? And he's like, yep. I was like, how would we flip that? He's like, well, if he could tell me what it is he wants done, I'll still run it by him, but I can go get these things done. So even short term, as they're figuring out what the big goals are, we agreed to a weekly meeting. They're in the office together all the time, right? So, I mean, they've got this dialogue, but a weekly meeting where they sit down and the financial advisor offloads what emails need to go out in the next 2 weeks. What would be a really good idea to get in front of clients? Who has promised a referral that they have not gotten the referral from yet? So those things, offloading it to this operations person who can write the first draft of the email for the client that had mentioned the referral, that can write the first draft of the newsletter, that can get ideas for the new event they want to do to get in front of clients. And that way he can feel proactive and not feel like he's waiting for, you know, what do you need me to do? I'm here. I'm trying to do something nice, making it much
right.
easier.
That's really smart advice. Yeah. And some of this stuff, I think sometimes when you think about it, you're like, oh, well, that all makes sense. But it's like sometimes when you're in it, you just don't. think about it, right? Or you just kind of allow time to press. It makes total sense. Let's have a weekly meeting. Let's just digest, bring everything you need. But, when you're in the thick of it, sometimes it just gets lost, right? So, super great advice. Um, and then when you're also looking at, I'm curious because you do work with a lot of teams and help them think through like how can they break through certain revenue barriers, or how do I take that business from here to here? What are the other things that you generally are looking at, in terms of strategy, or how do you take them to the next level?
Yeah. Often we want to reinvent the wheel each time. And so there's a way to make the service that you give your clients feel custom to them, but know that on the back end, it is very standard for your team. So, spending some time, so people don't unlock growth because they feel they need to do it all. So, I was talking with a client the other day. We've got about a 10-person team, right? They're trying to unlock. They've hit about a 3 or 4 year growth trajectory, and they're flattening out a little bit. And so we were talking about communication and operational efficiencies, not going and boiling the ocean and getting a new CRM and doing all the things that people try to do. But we were saying, okay, well, what if we didn't have to translate the notes from this client meeting to the person who's going to do the proposal? What if we can make it super efficient? And that's doing things like using the AI tools. How do we get the meeting summary? Are they enabling on their Zoom account? Are they enabling the AI feature so that the person who's going to do that proposal can then go ahead and just get those notes of the summary? Is the person who's that client facing person, are they making sure to ask all the questions in that meeting so that the person who's doing the proposal isn't coming back and asking more questions? So they're incorporating these things into the conversation with the client. So it feels very much like the client is, really getting this in depth. But what they're eliminating is the need to have 3 more conversations to get to that proposal. So that means the customer facing person can be with 3 other people instead of spending more times with the internal person translating. So to the client, it feels great. They've had a beautiful, long, in-depth conversation. All the questions have been answered. They're asking like all the cool stuff about, what the client needs. Then the proposal comes back. It is customized to that person. They're using words like, you said you needed X, and this is your biggest problem. Here's how we're going to solve your biggest problem. Here's what it's going to cost. That is something that you can do to unlock efficiency, because you look at each person and go, what's the highest and best use of your time? Your customer facing people, the highest and best use of their time is to be in front of customers, because customers are either doing business with you currently or they know somebody that they're going to refer you to. And I'm not talking about like old school cheesy referral, like, do you know 3 people you can send me to? Because I'm sorry if there's people doing that. That's not in that way, but getting
Right.
those, connections through others, is huge. So the customer facing people, unlocking the time that they can be in front of people or in front of new people is huge.
That is so good. So process wise, what you're doing is you're taking somebody through the life cycle of, their business, and okay, what are the operational pieces as people communicate with each other, and where can we create efficiencies so that we unlock our time, so that when we can double down on the things that we know drive the business
Mhm.
and we have more time to do it. So good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Getting that time. And then the other thing is solve big problems. People go, and what people find value in, your clients do, is when you solve their biggest problems. And so when you can foresee what's going to happen and fend off something that might happen around the corner, they're going to feel very well taken care of. So that's something that will again get that value for them. So they're going to keep coming back to you, whatever the business is.
Yeah. Because I think even in this like AI driven world, which I think AI, as you just described, can be huge, can create such efficiencies. But I think I think there's some people that say, oh, but there's relationships and da da da, but I think, as you just described, a perfect example of how it can be used to deepen relationship,
Mhm.
right? And so it's not that AI is replacing communication. In fact, I think it makes a greater conversation, like it makes the importance of deepening the relationship even that much greater, and just gives us a tool to deepen it. Um,
You're so right. It's that tool and it's the way that you use it and understanding how AI can enhance your business. So I'll give you an example. I work as a chief growth and strategy officer for a company that one of the first things that we did is we wanted to really get deep with some of the CEOs that we work with because we're a whole department for them. So we outsource an entire department for them. And so we're working directly with the CEO. So one of my first things was I went and interviewed 5 of our CEOs and talked a lot about, really heard from them what was going on, why our team was really important for them, how we are different than others, and blah blah blah. Great 1-hour conversations. Okay, so my best use is to be in front of these CEOs pulling out this information. They would never have gotten this information through an email summary or asking them through other means. But what I didn't need to do is then spend 5 hours calling through that information. So what I had is I have the AI summaries of those meetings, used a closed AI system. So nothing's going out anywhere. I've got a closed, paid for AI system. I took those summaries and put them in there. And I said, take out the themes. I knew the themes. I'd been in 5 hours worth of conversation, but my time in retyping all of this stuff is silly. I got
yeah.
a beautiful first draft of the summary that was done in about 2 seconds. And then I spent another hour adding my recollection, reviewing, making sure that it was what we needed for our team to then be able to take it and say, all right, here's the best value that we're providing these CEOs. That then transformed the products and services that we're now offering in the marketplace using AI to help with that, but also getting the value of, my values face to face.
Yeah.
It's not in the writing in the back end.
Exactly. Yeah. And so when you can leverage it in that way, your ability, as we started the conversation, your ability to make impact is greater because you can serve more people because of the operational efficiencies that you've just created, right? So you can serve more people, you can grow, um, all while spending time in your gift, which is really in the connection piece and finding out, and in those interviews, which is awesome.
Well, you asked something that's such a great question is like, how do you unlock growth? I think what people neglect to do sometimes, your customers that are currently working with you have a different view than you think they do. They have a better view. They can tell you better what you're doing really well and what you might need to improve upon. I mean, again, you want to craft how you're asking what you need to improve upon, carefully. You do
Yeah.
want to get good feedback, but you want to make sure that you're not then hindering the relationship. But really going and getting that voice of the customer will also save you time in marketing. Don't use your words, use their words. They're going to
Mm,
say things like, one that I learned with this organization about the department that we drop in, it's seamless. They want to know seamlessness. And they said that they wanted to make sure that they had a high level person that they had at their beck and call and that they really felt confident with that person. We
mm.
thought prior some of the tactical things were more important, but the CEO said, we can get those anywhere. What we can't get is your ability to see around corners that we can't see around. So,
Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah. And what would be, what is a good way to ask for feedback from your clients? So if you were to kind of go through, because I think that's a fabulous suggestion, is going through and seeing, from directly from your clients, your customers. Um, would you recommend like a third party doing that? Would you recommend, like, how do you ask? I'm sure if it's a third party, it's going to be easier for them to answer negatively.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but what would be your steps for doing that? Because I think that's fabulous. But like,
So,
obviously, it can't come from an
yeah.
email from me to my clients because they're going to be like, no, no, you're great.
You're wonderful. We love you. We love
Yeah,
you. And
exactly.
yeah, so I do find third party, but it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have
Okay.
to be a focus group or research. I think having somebody that is a professional that can come, I mean, obviously I do this for, certain clients, but I think you could, there's coaches or there's people that might be already in your network that, if you have a marketing person helping, the question should be like this, asking, how does the work that Kara does fit into your greater strategy, right? So if you think of in your business, you serve some investors. Well, great. So how does that work fit into your strategy? Okay, what are the services that we aren't yet delivering that you think you really need? What do you think the best pieces of our communication as a team with you are? What would you love if we were better at revolving around our communication? So sometimes you get little things that people aren't because they're not upset. So if you go at them and ask them about, what don't you like? They're not going to say, I don't like, but they're going to say, oh my gosh, I needed to ask so and so for an update on this ongoing project. I have another project that someone gives me a weekly update on, and it's so nice. Boom. That was a piece of feedback we received from a client. It was easy to immediately implement that. And they felt so heard. Wasn't a complaint. So the questions can be, how would we support your growth better?
Hmm.
Um, really asking about the impact to them because people like to talk about themselves. We're all really good about talking about what's important to us, but you can tease out what those services do or don't do. You could
Mhm.
even ask, what do you see is the challenge to our company's growth? Because then it doesn't feel like, oh my gosh, you're bad at this, but they can say things like, um, I can't get a hold of someone as quickly as I think I can. So I'd be worried if so one of the companies I'm working with uses people that are, as contractors that also have a full-time first job. The
Mhm.
clients know this, and that's one of the things that they came back and said, we're getting bigger. And at first, the availability 2 years ago, the availability of the person who, does 4 or 5 hours at night and it's asynchronous with us was totally good. But now we're getting a little bit bigger. We have a little more issues in real time. So that's not working as well. So that's
Mhm.
something that I don't know would have come out, but it also felt like, hey, we can frame that in hindrance to growth rather than we're going to leave you because this isn't perfect.
Right. Yeah. Because I think you're right. I think a lot of times too, like if there's a genuine relationship and connection, people want to support you. They want to support people they like. But at the same time, there comes a point where they're like, well, they'll want to support you as long as it also continues to sort of go along with their needs.
Mhm.
And as their needs change, then, even if they love you to death, but, they're not going to, they might look at other options. Um, so I wonder too, is there a way, and I'm specifically asking this for my real estate peeps that might be listening, or anybody that's in a sale business where, it's not necessarily like somebody, investors may buy multiple homes, right? But in the majority of people, on average, buy a home every 5 to 7 years. So it's not something that they're going to necessarily use you again or hire you again like next year. What kind of things would you say, or what kind of ways could you pose a question about like referral business,
Yeah.
or how might you almost like plant a seed for that perhaps?
Yeah. The seed that you want to do business with people like them. So, I mean, it is cliche, but people, if you say it right, it doesn't feel that cliche. Is to really be genuine and say, Kara, I loved working with you. You were such a great client. I appreciate it. I'm always trying to grow my business through more people that I like and I know I can and that I know I can serve.
Hmm.
So, um, asking them where the people that they hang out with are. That's always, I mean, that's the typical referral answer, right?
Yeah. Well, and I
So,
wonder if there's a surveyor doing it, if it could come up in a way where, if in a way that seems natural. You know what I mean? Or in a way that seems like, because I think there's two pieces, and maybe it's not. Maybe it's like you break the feedback into a different call than the referral call, you
Yeah.
know? But I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think the feedback is a great way because when you seek people's advice, you get their wheels spinning.
Hmm.
And, asking that thing of like, what did I do really well? And they're going to be like, oh, well, you did that. Like, you saved me by doing this thing. Or, I really loved this. And then you can kind of pinpoint what other people might be like that. Like, ask them about, their profession. Because that's something people are willing to talk about. So if
Hmm.
somebody is in a certain profession and you've helped them because they have no time, right? So maybe they're in a profession that works all these weekends and they have no time to do anything. And maybe you sent them a wonderful curated list of homes. That sometime when you go, sometimes people go only for the personal network. Sometimes when you go for the professional network, it's a little easier for people. So if you said, great, you're a high performing doctor and you've got, no time and your
Hmm.
feedback is that I helped you. If I was going to help other doctors, what would that look like?
Mm.
Another thing that I really find is I ask people what groups they're in. You'll find
Mm.
some interesting things like professional groups or so I often am finding business owners, right? So they're very much like finding individual investors. They do their own thing. They're not always in groups. They're not always, but sometimes they'll say, okay, I'm in this one group and it's all business owners and they are wonderful because they help me find the people that I need for my business. So
Mm.
I wouldn't just look at people who you think are buying houses. Look at places where people look for referrals on other things. So, case in point, I was at a business owner thing this morning. The person, although it's like mergers and acquisitions people, it's bankers, it's all of these. The person who got the most shout outs is the dentist in the room. And this is all high level, owners of businesses. Everybody was like, I go see him for my dental work. Thanks for the stuff. And I mean, that was a group of like
Wow.
40 or 50 people. So
What does
for,
he do?
I mean, apparently I've only met him. I haven't sat in his dentist chair yet, but is
That's so
great.
funny.
So look at where other people are getting their advice from
Hmm.
on things that are meaningful to them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's really good. I love the idea of, having somebody maybe do those calls on your behalf, so that you can get sort of like some additional info that you may not get just yourself, too. I think that's a great point, and I love some of the ways that you phrase that so that it allows people to feel honest, and I think um and also, I think it sets up your business. Even just the exercise of it is probably a touch point for your business to potentially deepen that impact, you know? Um, would you recommend saying something like your names will not be shared, or will you, like, you know what I mean? Like, if you're in a true survey, or how do you recommend setting that up so that people do feel like they could be more honest?
Yeah, I think it depends. So I'm going to also say when there's really negative feedback, often that's already come to light because it's
Mm,
gone bad in the transaction.
yeah.
So um, what I found is like when we've set this up for the business I was talking about doing the CEO survey, we said, "Hey, we're growing our business. We want to know what we can do better to grow." So we set it up as we are not just seeking you're calling us beautiful and nice,
Hmm.
but saying your feedback will be used in the service of growing the business. And potentially the way we put it in that is potentially offering other services for you that can help you. So you'd mentioned, sometimes when people think they're going to grow out of your business. Well, if you're getting feedback, you might start to offer a service that you didn't even know about. So, for instance, during one of those CEO calls, they thought they eventually are going to grow enough that they're going to bring this whole department in house. Well, they could, but we also thought, what would this longer term look like as they grow? How do we create something that is more valuable to them than bringing it in house? Or if they really do need to bring it in-house, we're going to be that strategic partner to say, let us help you bring it in-house. We can go recruit the people for you. We can set it up right. So that's an additional service that we can offer, is to say, hey, let me go ahead and set it up. So I think you want to seek feedback both for growth, but often you can find there might be something you could offer that is additional revenue, that is additional product or service. Like thinking about, I don't know your business deeply, but one of the things I know that whenever I've moved is finding somebody to, oh my goodness, figure out how to decorate. I'm terrible at that. That's not my thing. That's wonderful. So I'm sure you've got people who add on things like that, but anything that you can add to add more value, that's also going to get people talking about you, because they're going to be talking about like, oh my gosh, Kara's wonderful in the house transaction, but you know what she did for me afterwards? She hooked me up with the best designer, whatever that looks like.
Right. Yeah. It's funny. There's I had started to put together, and then the bandwidth is probably not there just this year, but something along those lines, right? And doing home services, like having kind of a whole almost separate entity, that could really be to like call in and get like the plumber, the electrician, the whatever you need, and like discounts on all those vendors. So kind of like setting up an additional network.
And that's beautiful because that keeps people in front of you. So it's not just on that house transaction. So
Yeah.
even if that might not be, it might be a huge recurring revenue at some point, but it might not be huge revenue, but if it keeps them coming back to you. So
Yeah.
one of the things that I was listening to, an outsourced chief marketing officer, and he was saying, really becoming the place that people go. So one of the things I've done to build my business and reputation is people know that if it's in business, I know someone. So if you're looking for anything in business, I have a wonderful network. I will be able to find the right person for you or put you in touch with 2 or 3 of the people that might be the right person. So people will come and they'll ask, okay, well, do you have a benefits advisor? And I'll be like, great. Here's the top 3 benefits brokers. I know they work with people your size. So for you and for your agents out there, being that one-stop shop, but doing it in a way that doesn't mean you're then looking up every plumber,
Right.
and then having to spend your time, really making the connection. But if you can ping somebody back and be like, here's the top 3 plumbers, this one lives in your area or works in your area.
Yeah.
I'm sure you do that all the time, but that
Yeah.
keeps them coming back to you.
Yeah. It's like, and then how do you kind of operationalize that a little bit more? Yeah. Exactly that, kind of being the person that they think of when they think of anything real estate, not just, I need to buy or sell. So,
You can set up a text line that somebody else can manage. I mean, that's where an assistant or a virtual assistant can be great. You could even have a list of your vendors and a text line that is specifically for that. I've done that before where I've got a text line on simple questions. It's
so
manned by somebody who is able to do this. Is before virtual assistants got that good.
right.
But what you want them to think is anything home related. They're like, oh, I need to talk to her. She knows people.
Yes.
If it's about a house, I know she can help me.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Um, so I love this. And thank you so much for just everything you shared. I think that this was a really awesome conversation, especially for so many of our listeners who are, kind of in this boat, right? Of like, we know we we need to grow or we want to grow, but what is that right next step? And you've given us so much to think about. So super appreciative of your time. And if somebody wants to, reach out to you, or what kind of clients are you taking on right now too, so that, anybody that may have a specific need, can reach out.
Yeah. So typically I work with people who've got an established business that is most often 10 to 20 employees, but I will talk to people who've got less, or I can at least point you in the right direction. And I help them unlock that next level of growth. But if you're a solopreneur looking for it, I can help point you in the right direction or give you some resources to look at. I think your podcast is amazing. You're such a resource for people. So if they'd like to get in touch with me, it is at north12partners.com or Shay Prosser on LinkedIn. But I think, continuing to listen to the people like Devo that you've had on and can help people as they're growing their brand. That's the key. Create a brand that's consistent and that feels genuine to you, and you'll continue to thrive.
Love that. Well, and I forgot to ask one of the questions that I always ask because I am just genuinely curious. So I'll ask it now. And that is, do you have any type of, practice or way of kind of centering yourself? Because I think part of, again, the entrepreneurial journey can be it can be a lot of things: lonely, scattered, chaotic. But, what are the ways that you kind of come back to center in your own business, whether that's a meditative practice or whatever it looks like for you?
Yeah, I think that, you know, as entrepreneurs, we are always driven and we always want more. But I think we also have to celebrate our success. And success can look like I did the things this week that I set out to that can grow my business. And so, what I do to center myself and make sure that I am staying on track and not kidding myself, but also not feeling like I need to be up at 3 o'clock in the morning trying to email people to get in front of them, is I've set out what a successful week looks like and how many people I need to have meaningful, good conversations with a week. And then how do I set those up? So when I look at the end of a week, or as I'm looking out at my week, I know that I have done those things. And then I also, the other piece is to center myself, is to give myself permission to shut off and to be fully present for my family and friends, or for myself. If I want to go sit and stare at the backyard because it's, the end of a long week and I just want to relax and do that, I try to really give myself permission to both do the things that matter and then relax.
Hmm. That's awesome, and I think I'm just laughing because yesterday morning, actually, I was so exhausted. I like literally just tanked, because I've been going, 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 and so I actually like took a nap. At like I dropped my kids off at school and I came home at like 9 a.m. and I don't know, I like just kind of closed my eyes for an hour. And so I think you're right. I think that sometimes we go, go, go. Um, Learning how to celebrate the small steps, learning how to celebrate like just doing the right next thing. What's that right next thing that you need to do to move the needle, not the million things that are on your plate. Um, and then also just celebrating the small wins and listening to your body and to yourself to understand when sometimes you just need a little time.
I love that you just took a nap. That's fantastic. Because either if you would have powered through that, you'd be like many of us who just sit and stare at the computer and go, "What am I supposed to do?" And you don't really do anything for that hour because your brain is not ready. And so you go take a nap and then be like, "All right, I can do
I
it."
I felt so much more refreshed, So I listened, I've shared it on the podcast before. I don't know if I've told you about it. It's called Think Up. Have you ever heard Think Up?
Oh no, that's awesome though.
Um, so I talk about I don't get anything from the app. But what I've downloaded it, I have the paid subscription. It has like affirmations in it that just kind of like center me, and you can record them in your own voice. So I just had my like pods in. I just like went to sleep with my subliminal
Yeah.
messages coming in,
Yeah.
and it
You know
was
what?
so good.
I love that. And the only other thing you've made me think of is something I've done in starting this business that I was not as good at when I've started other businesses. I've paid really careful attention to the energy of the people that I'm around,
Mm.
um, and been very, very intentional. There's people that maybe would be helpful in my business, but that I just don't vibe with their energy, or I don't really connect with it. And I've decided that there's so many people I could be working with that I'm not working with those people, not because they're bad, but I'm also really drawn to the people that I love their energy. I love what you're doing with the soul connecting and really thinking about that intentionally. Um, so it feeds you more than drains you.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say that because I was just in a group setting where we're talking about, well, what's a soul aligned client? Like what does that even mean? And because there's so many different personalities. So like, sometimes you don't necessarily mesh with everybody, but soul inclined is just somebody that's grateful for what you do. You know what I mean? So
Beautiful.
it's not even like somebody, like they may not be your like soulmate, but at
Mhm.
the same time, if they're like grateful for the work and you can kind of see it in the way that they light up when they're in gratitude for what you're offering, like those are your people, and the people that don't appreciate it, you're right. It sometimes can just be a drain. And on paper, they may like look like the perfect person, but if they don't really get it or they don't feel grateful for what you're offering, then it's probably just not going to be a good fit for both of you.
You're so smart because it's people hire me to help them unlock what they can't unlock themselves, and that often means that we have to have some hard conversations. It's not mean, but you've hired me to say what you're doing over here and spending time on is not going to get you where you want to go. So let's rearrange and spend time. But that means undoing some stuff that people are doing. So if their energy is like, why the heck are you here and why are you telling me? I can't get them there. But if their energy is like, this kind of is hard, this kind of sucks today. And oh my gosh, I wish I would have known that before, but let's go do it. Or, hey, can I take a minute and just internalize that? That's, you know, the energy doesn't always have to be like excited. It just has
Yeah.
to be um, getting you in the right direction of where you want to go.
Yeah. Like I see you and I see the gift in you, the gift in me sees the gift in you, like, or that whole thing. Right. So, yeah. So anyway, I am so appreciative. This has been such a fun conversation. I knew it would be. And to all of our listeners, if you'd like to learn more about Shay, we'll include where to contact her in the show notes. And, just appreciate you being with us today and always. And until next time.
Well, thank you so much. It's been great to be with you and your listeners.
Loved being here with you today and would love to connect with you more over on Instagram. My handle is linked to the show notes, or you can just type in @Chaffin Donofrio. And I have something special for you as a free gift, my Dynamic Life Journal. This special book has the power to really help you live a soul-inspired life. Go to freegiftfromkara.com. Easy to remember, freegiftfromkara.com. Until next time, beautiful people, sending all my love.